short as lyrics of a medium length. And Tennyson produced 12 idylls, and they are called the Idylls of the King in 1859. It was in 1859 Tennyson brought out the Idylls of the King, and Morty Arthur was included there under the new title Passing of Arthur. And there are the other poems also connected with the Arthurian legend, like Enid, Vivian, Elaine, Lady of Shalott, Guinevere, etc. And this poem, actually, when it was produced for the first time, was sandwiched between the lines of a poem called Epic. And when it was included in the collection, the epic was abandoned and the poem was entitled The Passing of Arthur. And when we hear all these things, we have not yet heard the most important poem written by Tennyson. Tennyson's masterpiece appeared in 1850, and it was In Memoriam. And about In Memoriam, I told you, Queen Victoria greatly admired the poem as the next important book after Bible. That gave her strength in moments of weakness and confusion. And In Memoriam was published by Tennyson in 1850. Actually, he never planned to publish In Memoriam as a collection. He had written the poem during the course of 17 years. So he had written the poem in the course of 17 years. There were 131 smaller poems combined to produce the collection In Memoriam. And the 131 poems were written by Tennyson at various intervals. And these poems were written after the death of Arthur Hallam, his very close friend. His very close friend was Arthur Hallam. And Arthur Hallam had promised to marry the sister of Tennyson also. And he was a very close friend. And he was there in the college. And they were called apostles. And the death of Arthur Hallam became a great blow to Tennyson. And his poems became elegiac after the death of Arthur Hallam. And he had produced many number of poems. And when he wanted to publish a few poems as a collection entitled In Memoriam, he chose 131 poems, smaller poems, and included them in the collection In Memoriam, and brought out the collection in 1850. And it was in the same year he became poet laureate, and we regard 1850 as the annus mirabilis of Tennyson, the most auspicious year of Tennyson. 1850 is regarded as the annus mirabilis of Tennyson. Tennyson got married in the year, he became laureate in the year, and his masterpiece In Memoriam came out in the year. And In Memoriam contained 131 smaller poems of varying length. And each poem, very interestingly, constituted of isometric stanzas. And the lines are made in uniform length. So they are called isometric stanzas. And there is also a very popular rhyme scheme adopted for the whole poem. For all the 131 poems, he had adopted a rhyme scheme. Abba, A-B-B-A. The first line and the fourth line will rhyme together. And the second line and the third line also will rhyme together. Abba, A-B-B-A. It's very popular. In Memoriam stanzas called Abba stanzas. And the stanzas are called In Memoriam stanzas. Very popular rhyme scheme is used in this poem. We come to find the isometric stanzas. And the stanzas are produced in the rhyme scheme of Abba. And the poem In Memoriam has got an epilogue and a prologue and an epilogue. And this is ordered in that way. The 131 poems were collected by Tennyson and added the prologue and the epilogue also. The prologue is actually a hymn to God. The prologue is produced as a prayer to God. And the epilogue is almost like an epithalamion. And it is a poem on the marriage of his sister. That his sister is going to be married soon. So in fact, in an elegy, normally we come to find that the ending will be in a relief, in a note of relief. So there will be the sorrow in the poem, and the ending will be in a happy way. There must be a relief produced at the end. And in this poem also, we come to find that, so there are the stanzas showing the relief in the mind of the poet. And here we come to find that there is an epilogue, and it is to be called an epithalamion, a wedding song on the marriage of his sister. And the prologue is actually a hymn to God, a prayer to God, and epilogue is an epithalamion on the marriage of his sister. And T.S. Eliot made a very popular remark on the poem, that it is the concentrated diary of a man. And there are very popular critics making their references and opinions on this poem. For example, K.W. Grandin, a famous critic, observed In Memorium as an act of autobiography. Grandin maintained that it was an act of autobiography and autotherapy. And Eliot made the remark that it is the concentrated diary of a man confessing himself. And Tennyson has also called the poem a way of the soul. Very popularly, he called the poem a way of the soul. And this is the way of the soul. We come to find that there are 4 stages. And they are stages of grief, doubt, hope, and faith. And these are the 4 stages. A stage of grief, a stage of doubt, a stage of hope and faith. And in the prologue of the poem, we come to find Tennyson presenting the testament of his faith. The poet sees God as immortal, immortal love, and God is invisible, unprovable and unconquerable. God is invisible, God is unconquerable and unprovable. And Tennyson identifies his sorrow. In the poem, we come to find Tennyson identifying his sorrow with the sorrow of a yew tree. Y-E-W, yew trees are trees found in the graveyards. Commonly, they are found in the church graveyards. And he comes to identify his sorrow with the sorrow of the yew tree. And in the second section of the poem, the poet is found grappling with honest doubt, and there is the section of doubt. And some friend has written a letter to Tennyson reminding him that though Arthur Hallam is dead, his other friends are alive. Why he has been spending all the time mourning on the death of Arthur Hallam? Though Arthur Hallam is dead, the other friends are still alive. And the friend has also reminded Tennyson that death is a common occurrence. Why Tennyson is found mourning all the time? Death is actually a common occurrence. But the poet says that the view contained in the letter of his friend is as useless as chaff after the grain has been removed. When the grain has been removed, chaff has got no worth at all. And the opinion contained in the letter written by his friend is actually chaff when the grain is removed. And the poet says that nothing can make him feel happy and nothing can make him forget the death of Hallam. And it only increases his sorrow, because in the death of Arthur Hallam, he finds the destiny of the whole world. In the death of Arthur Hallam, he finds the destiny of the whole world. The hopelessness of mankind is identified in the death of Arthur Hallam. And then Tennyson presents a few pictures, interesting pictures. The picture of a father toasting to the health of his son without knowing that the son is killed in the battlefield. So we come to find a father toasting to the health of his son without knowing that the son is dead. And there is also a picture of a mother praying for the safety of her son, not knowing that the son has been dead and given a sea burial. The first picture is that of a father toasting for the health of his son without knowing that the son dead. And the next picture is that of a lady praying for the safety of her son without knowing that the son has been dead and that he has been given a sea burial. And Tennyson also gives the picture of a bride getting ready to receive her betrothed. And she is found getting ready to receive her betrothed lover, not knowing that the betrothed is dead in an accident. And these are the three pictures. The first picture is that of a father toasting for the health of his son without knowing that the son dead. And the second picture is that of a mother praying for the safety of her son without knowing the son dead. And the third is the picture of a bride making herself ready to receive her groom without knowing that the groom was dead in an accident. And these are the three pictures. And we come to find another picture of a young man coming to meet his lady. But when he reaches her house, she is not to be found. She has left the place. And he becomes very sorrowful. When the young man comes to meet his lover, the lover is not found in the house. And he becomes very sorrowful. But the sight of a flower, which she liked most, reassured him and made him happy. When he reached the place, his lover was not there, and he became very sorrowful. But when he found a flower in the garden, loved by the lady, loved by his lover, he became happy. He became reassured and happy. And towards the end of the poem, Tennyson describes the journey of the ship that carries the dead body of A.L.Tennyson. And he wishes the ship to bring the dead body safely home. And he introduces the ship carrying the dead body of A.L.Tennyson. And he wishes the ship to bring the dead body safely. And Tennyson, I told you, described the poem as a way of the soul. And it is actually the spiritual pilgrimage of the poet. In one sentence, we can say that the poem in Memorium is the spiritual pilgrimage of the poet. But the poem cannot be cited as an example of a religious poem. But this poem cannot be cited as a religious poem, like the poem of Herbert or John Donne. And the religiosity of the poem is only peripheral. If there is any religiosity in the poem, it is only peripheral, superficial. And T.S. Eliot found in the poem religiosity, and he said that religious is not the quality of the poem. So he says that the poem is religious not because of its faith. It was the opinion of T.S. Eliot. According to him, the poem is religious not because of its faith, but because of the quality of its doubts. And in the opinion of T.S. Eliot, it's a poem of despair, but a despair of a religious kind. According to T.S. Eliot, the poem is religious not because of its faith, but because of the quality of its doubts. And again, in his opinion, it's a poem of despair, and it is a despair of a religious kind. And actually the poem reflects the conflict between the need to believe and the difficulty of believing. It's actually the question of doubts. And the confusion is between the need to believe and the difficulty of believing. And so the comment made by Queen Victoria is justified, that it is a poem that can give comfort. It's a poem that can reassure peace and comfort. And Tennyson also brought out collections of poems like Maud and other poems. So it was published in 1855. Maud, M-A-U-D, Maud and other poems. And it is in this collection, there is the popular poem entitled Maud, M-A-U-D, Maud. And the eponymous character is called Maud. And she is the beautiful lady. And she is the eponymous character Maud. And she falls in love with a beautiful young man. The lady falls in love with a young man. And the lovers meet secretly. But the brother forbids her from meeting her lover, from enjoying love with the lover. The brother forbids her, prevents her from entertaining love, and the lover actually becomes angry and fights with him and kills the brother. But when the brother is killed, the lady becomes very sorrowful. And the narrator, after all, escapes from the place. After killing her brother, he thought that she would join with him. But when the brother was killed, she became very remorseful and refused to join with the lover. And the lover was made to escape from the place. And he reached France, joined the military, and became dead. And Maud also becomes dead. The story of a young lady named Maud. She fell in love with a young man, a handsome young man. But the brother stood against the love. And the lover fought with the brother and killed him. He thought that Maud would marry him. But Maud refused to marry. And she became very sorrowful. And at the end she became dead. The lover also felt like killing himself. But he joined the military. And while fighting in the battlefield, he also became dead. He joined the Crimean War. And he also became killed in the battle. And there is also another popular poem entitled The Charge of the Light Brigade. Actually, the poem describes a disastrous historical military engagement. The Charge of the Light Brigade actually describes a historical military engagement during the Crimean War. And it presents the story of a brigade consisting of 600 soldiers who rode on horsebacks. They were found riding on horseback. And when they were misguided, all of them fell into a valley. So they were misguided. They thought that the place was so even, but it was a valley. And all of them fell into the valley and became dead. The death of about 600 soldiers. And Tennyson is found commemorating the incident of the death of the 600 soldiers in the poem The Charge of the Light Brigade. And there was also another poem entitled Enoch Arden, and it was one question asked from this poem. UGC once asked a question from this poem, Enoch Arden. And Enoch Arden was produced by Tennyson in 1864. In Enoch Arden, we come to find a seaman, and he is believed to be dead. And his wife waits for him and finally remarries another man. Not because of her interest, but she was forced into marry. And the seaman returns and finds her remarried. So a few years after, the seaman returns. So in Lord Byron also we come to find almost a similar situation in Beppo. So in the poem Beppo, we come to find Beppo leaving his wife and heard by the people that he was dead, and it was believed that Beppo was dead. And then his wife took a cavalier night and went to visit a carnival, and there she met Beppo, and there was no problem between the lady and Beppo, and Beppo joined with the lady and considered the night as a common friend, and there was no hypocrisy in matters of sex and marriage in Italy. And Byron actually wanted to show the hypocrisy found in England and Scotland. There is no hypocrisy in Italy in connection with marriage. And Beppo joins with his wife, and there is no rivalry between Beppo and the new cavalier knight chosen by his wife. And here in the poem Enoch Arden, we come to find the sailor is called Enoch Arden. Actually, he was made to work as a sailor, a merchant sailor. And while joined with a merchant ship, he became lost, and nothing was cared about him. And the people believed that Enoch Arden was dead, and the wife was made to marry another man because she had to look after the children. And in fact, she was forced to marry another man. And a few years later, Enoch Arden returned to the place, and keeping himself at a distance, he watched his house and found that his wife was married to another man. And when he made inquiries, he learned that one of his sons was also dead. One of his children was also dead. And there was no need for him to return to his wife. If he would return, it would add only troubles, create only troubles. And without intimating the lady that he had come, so he left the place. The story of Enoch Arden is described in the poem entitled Enoch Arden in 1864, and UGC asked a question from this poem. And there are also a few plays written by Tennyson. Tennyson produced a few plays like Harold, Beckett, and the Cup, and these three plays are called history plays, and they were written in poetic format. He produced these three plays in poetic format, verse dramas. One was Harold, and the other was Beckett, and the last one was the Cup. And he had also produced a prose